We are so excited to bring us all together for this conversation in what is our national digital iteration of our regular local talks called Conversations with Common Sense. So we have created a series of webinars this spring tapping into our favorite experts who will offer real-time advice about solving some of the dilemmas you may be experiencing at home now, because I know I certainly am experiencing the dilemma that we're going to talk about today. So it's not surprising that most of us are feeling more stressed and anxious these days. Living with teens, we know this all too well. So during these unprecedented and unpredictable times, now more than ever, media and technology are more important and valuable in our lives and the lives of our families. So this is at the core of who we are at Common Sense. It is in our DNA. It is why we were founded 16 years ago. We know that what you watch and what you see and what you do on your screens matters. And it is our mission to help kids thrive in our media saturated environment. So due to the many issues that the coronavirus quarantine has created for families and teachers, we just launched a brand new platform called Wide Open School. And the URL is wideopenschool.org. And our partners include Google, Sesame Street, Zoom, Nat Geo, PBS Kids, Scholastic, Khan Academy, and many, many more. You can see the full list on the site. It's designed as a single stop for the resources we all need right now. You can sort by interest and by age. For example, you can watch the Met tonight. You can watch Broadway shows. I know some of the Broadway entertainers are going to be live. You can go with your kids and do a cooking class. So there's all kinds of live streaming things. Take some time at the end after we finish in the next hour and just experiment with it. I think you're going to really enjoy it, especially the daily schedule for kids. So today I am thrilled to bring you Dr. Maria Sobel, who is a licensed clinical psychologist offering psychotherapy in private practice here in San Francisco. But in this Zoom world, she's available now, for everyone. Maria has been in private practice for 20 years, and she's been practicing with kids in trauma. She has a deep background in working with kids, specifically teens. So I promise you are going to leave this webinar understanding why your teens are driving you batty. But before we get started, let me give you a short overview of what to expect. You are all on mute because we have hundreds of people on the webinar, but you do have the ability to ask questions. And if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you will see both a chat icon and a Q&A icon. Please ask the questions in the Q&A, and my colleagues, Melanie and Lisa, are monitoring that, and they will be answering all of your questions in real time. So if you can't stay the whole 45 minutes, don't stress. We'll be posting this video on our YouTube channel so you can see it in the future. And we will keep you informed about many of our other webinars. So let's get started. First, I would like to ask you, Maria, could you give us a brief description of what is going on right now with teenagers and kind of why it's happening?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I think just framing this whole discussion, this whole conversation with what is the developmental task of the teenager right now, and what is it, how do we understand what we're seeing in the behaviors and the conflicts that come up. So essentially the teenager's job right now developmentally is to separate from their parents. They need to figure out who they are separate from their parents. Their whole lives, they've grown up taking on the values of their parents, thinking about their parents as these all-knowing caretakers, and really looking up to them. And in a way to think about this as having put their parents up on a pedestal. And so in order for them to figure out who they are separate from their parents, they have to completely knock their parent off that pedestal 100%. And what that looks like is pushing back on values, arguing with parents, suddenly not wanting to do the things that have always been really valuable as family values, not wanting to do things, not wanting to follow rules. And they know exactly what buttons to push because they know what values their parents have and how to push back on that.
Yeah.
So, and just to give you a little bit of a window into this unconscious struggle that's happening with kids as they're starting to become teenagers, their bodies are changing, their brains are changing, they're thinking about things more abstractly, more globally, more esoterically, and they're feeling a lot more confident in many ways. And they're getting to the point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to go out into the world. I got this. I don't need to be told what to do. You can't tell me what to do. I'm big. I can make my own decisions now. So they want to go out into the world, and they start to kind of creep out there, and then they realize, whoa, I don't think I have this. The world is kind of scary. There's a lot of responsibilities. I don't think I'm ready for it. It's kind of a scary place. I need to pull back. I actually need my parents. But wait, I'm not supposed to need my parents. I hate that I need my parents. I do need them, and I hate that I need them. And it is just this back and forth. And it's an incredibly difficult struggle for them to manage. And I think they have actually found a very brilliant way of managing this internal conflict. And that is by fighting with you as parents. It is kind of is kind of brilliant the way they can push back, they can separate from you, they can devalue you, while at the same time staying connected to you through fighting. They're going to find loopholes in your rationale. They're going to find flaws in your explanations. They're going to find ways to negotiate with you ongoing. And that is the attempt to stay connected with you more than it is to actually get their way. Although it looks like, and they're not aware of this process, so it doesn't really do any good to point it out to them. But I find this a helpful perspective from my point to just notice that that's what's happening, that the pushing back is the need to separate and the fighting is a need to stay engaged.
Oh, I love that.
So
I love that analogy, and it makes me feel a little bit better with these, very at times odd conflicts that I'm having with my kids who are at home right now, that seem to come out of the blue. So I want to know, in your opinion right now, and what you've heard and everything that's going on with the coronavirus, what is the number one issue that you hear for parents and teens?
Yeah, well, I think it is related to what I was just talking about. The idea that kids need to separate, which means they need to be spending less time with their parents right now. And they need to be going out into the world and connecting with their peers and the world right now. And so this is the natural order of this developmental stage, is that kids spend less time with parents and more time with peers in the outside world. However, the coronavirus and the pandemic and the shelter in place and the quarantine and all that comes with that is requiring that they actually have to do the exact opposite of what they are biologically, naturally programmed to do right now. They have to spend more time with their parents and less time with their peers. So this throws a major monkey wrench into the normal developmental process, which is already very, very hard.
Yeah.
The other piece I think that is relevant is that as they're going out into the world, that part of, oh, I'm ready to go out into the world, oh, this is really scary to go out into the world is very scary right now, for all of us. And we don't know what's happening. There's a lot going on politically. There's a lot going on with climate change and uncertainty about that. There's a lot going on. There's the pandemic. There's a lot happening out in the world. There's a lot of uncertainty. So the world looks like a much scarier place than it has certainly when we were growing up. And so the kind of fights and conflicts that are going to come up are going to be unique to every family. And although there's going to be lots of overlap, but I think that the conflicts are going to be rooted in this process that is where they're being asked to do something that's very, very different than what they're supposed to do. And so it's going to come out in fights around schedules, homework, social media, video games, screen time. When do we sit down and eat meals? Why don't you come out of your room and spend time with the family? We're all supposed to be spending family time together. Why are you holed up in your room? You need to get out and get some exercise. It's, you name it. These are just some examples, but those conflicts are going to come up in this context.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? The person that they want to spend the least amount of time with at this point in their lives are the people that they're stuck with 24/7. I mean,
right.
It just, it sucks on so many levels.
Yes.
For them and for us as well, right? Because we have to deal with their conflict, and they're so angry, and so I want to talk about a little bit about that anger. And I see it in my own kids, and I want them to be able to have that anger, but I don't know how far to let them go with it. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so right, kids are, and if we're thinking about recognizing that kids are angry and they need to push back. That's their job. And they also need us, and we need to be holding limits about what they can and can't do. So we need to figure out as parents, where are our non-negotiables? And I think about this as like an analogy of sort of having wide roads and high fences. So you've got your high fences here. Your high fences are where your non-negotiables are. What is not okay? The buck stops here. You cannot pass this limit. The wide road is all the wiggle room in between. And there needs to be, with teens, a wide road. There needs to be a wiggle room, and there needs to be a place where the buck stops. Mm-hmm. So around anger, it might, you're setting a limit, you're requiring certain things of them, and they may be really pissed off about that. And they may decide that they want to swear and slam things. And they may want to say, this effing sucks. And I think this is ridiculous and you're being unfair. And, and I think you're making the wrong decision and you're the worst parent ever.
Jennifer wanted to know, so when they're doing this, should we, are we supposed to, engage with them during this time? She wanted to know, when they're arguing, do we walk away? How do you handle our response to their anger?
So I think we want to acknowledge that they're angry.
Yeah,
absolutely. This doesn't feel fair. You are stuck in a situation that you didn't ask for, that you aren't in control of, and that this isn't fair. And this is the situation that we're in, and we need to work together to find a way to help you be able to do the things that you should be able to do within this context. And you really only need to say it once. And I wouldn't get involved in the back and forth, because then they're going to come back and say, yeah, but you said, and you let my little brother do this, and I did that, and you did that, and I saw you, and you, all of the things that you're going to feel like you need to come back and justify and negotiate. So I would put it out there once and set the limit and say, it's okay to be mad. And maybe it's okay for them to swear and say, this is unfair. It's not okay for them to be abusive to you. That's your high fence, right? They can't call you an abusive name. They can't destroy property in the home. They can't beat the crap out of their little brother. They need to know where the buck stops, but they can express their anger.
And that's where your family values come in, because maybe it's okay if they slam their door, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how they're going to experience their anger. So let them slam their door, but they can't bang on the wall. So I guess that's where you set your limits. That's it.
Set your limits and decide, and let them know, because they really do need to know where the limits are. It's important. They're asking for where those limits are. And what it means is we need to be able to tolerate our own distress around their anger. Yeah.
So I wanted to also ask you about, having a conversation with them, engaging with them. And what are some tips that you would give to engage with your teen, to have a conversation that isn't about, that isn't fueled by anger? Yeah. And one of the things that I just noticed in the last few days was my own vulnerability, and showing that in terms of I just don't know what the answer is. I don't know, but we're gonna get through this together. And I couldn't fix it. So I just wanted to hear from you. What do I talk to them about?
Yes, well, I think that's a great perspective to have. And I think the goal here is to open up and create a milieu that is open for them to talk about their feelings. They are going through a really intense grieving process. I have been hearing from teens in my practice, in my family, that this is time they know they're never going to get back again. This is really precious, special time for them that they were looking forward to, that they were, that this is they do have an awareness that this is an important time of their life, and they know they're losing out on this. There's some kids I've talked to who know that their friends are planning to move at the end of the summer or at the end of the school year, and now they know they're never going to see these people again. And this is a really intense grieving process for them. So to allow them to talk about that, to open that up, to talk about how hard that is for them, how sad that is for them, without, and I think what you said, Dana, is really important, without trying to fix it. Because we as parents tend to want to fix our kids' distress. We're kind of programmed to do that. And when our kids is nothing that hurts more is to see our kids in distress, and we can't be able to do anything about it. So there's our own helplessness that we're trying to fix. And one of the things that, I like to think about things in metaphors. So here's another one, is that if you think about your teen who's really having a hard time in this deep hole, and they're struggling in this deep hole, our instinct as parents is to reach our hand in and pull them out of that hole. Mm-hmm. And that's the fixing. This is what you need to do. It's going to be okay. You just do this, get a different perspective, and that is not necessarily the most helpful thing, even though it comes from a genuine place of caring. What I'm suggesting is that instead of trying to pull them out of the hole, that we crawl down in the hole with them. We sit with them in the hole. We listen to their sadness, their grief, their anger, their frustration, their feelings of injustice. And we sit with them and just allow that to be present until we can work with them together to find out how to crawl out of the hole themselves. Yeah. Engage them in their own problem-solving process.
Yeah, I like that. And I also, when I was talking to you earlier, I know for me, sometimes it's the language that I use with them, like if they've gone too far, or if we're in the middle of an argument, you don't want to patronize them, because I think they recognize that.
Yes.
And you had some really great language for me to be able to talk to my kids that wasn't patronizing, but it allowed them to express what they were feeling. And I was wondering if you could share some of the language that you talk about, of how you can talk to your kids.
Yeah. Well, and talking to them specifically about, and I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to, Dana, but talking to them specifically about their sense of invincibility, that they think there's nothing, you guys are overreacting. I'm not going to get this virus. I'm fine. My friends are fine. I can go out. I can do these things. And to engage with them in that conversation, that, yeah, you are in a pretty low risk category, and you might not get sick, and you might also be someone who can pass this virus along to someone else who doesn't have the resources that you have, who might get sick. Somebody more vulnerable than you. Bring it home to them. Somebody like grandma or grandpa. And I don't think it's a bad idea in this case to throw in a little guilt here.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the guilt.
Yeah, and to say,
how do we use that?
You have an opportunity to do something for the community, for the greater good. And even though you may not, even though you may not get sick, you may contribute to somebody else getting sick and somebody else dying. So how can we work together? How can we make this process more bearable for you, in the face of you really wanting to do something that you really should be able to do, which is to go out and have fun with your friends? And you ought to be able to do that. That's what you should be able to do. And you can't. So how can we make this process bearable for you? Mm-hmm. That's not us telling them, everybody else has it worse off than you do. You need to think of the bigger picture. Stop thinking about yourself all the time. It's letting them know that you get that this is hard for them, and it's unfair, and it really is unfair. Yeah. And this is hard for me, and we don't know what's going to happen. So let's work together, engage them, because they want to be part of the adult world. So engage them in being part of the adult world and strategizing about how to manage this situation.
So one of our guests has a question about, what do you do if they have crossed the limits, if they've gone beyond your wall? What are the steps that you take if they've crossed the boundary?
Well, I think it depends on in what way they've crossed the boundary. And I don't know if that is possible to get a specific example of that.
I'll see if
it's not.
We can talk about that.
I think it depends on what the boundary is and how, so for example, if you've set the limit of, it's not okay to call me an effing B, even though then that's an abusive language, but it's okay to swear. I think you can get right in their face and you can say, that is not okay. It is not okay to be abusive to me. Done. And then walk away. And they can keep doing that. And I wouldn't go back and engage them. I would, just continue to set the limit, look them, be very clear about it, because they are listening to you.
Yeah.
They are pushing back in such a big way, but they are listening to you. And it's still important for us as parents to let them know what our values are, what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And you talked about another, and I love this metaphor that you used, because it was really helpful for me. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the tug of war, because I feel like all parents can relate to that. And sometimes, definitely during this past month, I have just kind of said, okay, I'm done. And so I'd love for you to share that metaphor, which really helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think about parenting adolescents as a tug of war. Your teen is on the other end, you're on the other end, and it's a push-pull back and forth. And the kid's job is to push, pull, 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 push back, pull, that's the kid's job. And our job is to hold that rope. We give and take a little bit, but we need to hold that rope. And so what the kid really needs is to know that there's someone on the other side pulling back. That helps them feel safe. That helps them feel secure, because remember, they're going out into the world and it's scary out there. They need to know that there is still someone on the other end of that rope keeping them safe. Because when we get to the place, like you said, Dana, where you're just like, I am so done, I'm so tired, we let go of the rope, the kid pulls, and what happens? They fall over. And that is not what we want to happen. We want to be able to continue to hold the rope. Mm-hmm. And so as hard as that is, and this is where parents need so much support, because we have all reached that limit where we're just like, I'm done, I'm out. And it's okay to be done and out for a period of time. If you've had it and you're just like, you know what, I can't have this conversation anymore, I'm done, take a break, because it's probably not helpful or healthy for anyone to continue to engage. But that doesn't mean you're not going to come back and keep holding that rope. So letting go of the rope doesn't mean you're constantly engaged in battle with them. It means that you, in the long term, you don't let go of that rope. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it's helpful. Another one of our guests had a question about a sibling. Maybe it was a younger sibling is dealing with their older siblings' anger and frustration. And, and they're trying to respect their teen's angst while also not having their mood bring down the entire family. And so I'm sure that, we all have dealt with that, right? Where one kid is just, we're all like tiptoeing around them to try and keep them happy. What would you suggest you do in those situations that I think we're all familiar with? That we try, where everyone's walking on eggshells to try and keep one person happy. Yeah. Should we be doing that?
Well, yeah, I think that ends up, the whole family feels like they're being held hostage in a way, which is really stressful for everybody. And so thinking about, to think about it in the context of what is that, and it's hard to know if I don't know exactly the specific situation, but in general, there's the teen is expressing something. The teen is expressing some feelings, some fears. A lot of times the fear and angst and anxiety comes out in anger. And again, it's the pushing back. It's the pushing back on the family. And so, so I think, again, this is where you want to set limits on behavior. It's like, is it okay for this kid to be sullen and kind of sulk around and isolate in his room? Maybe that's, what you want to do. Is it okay for that kid to come in and start picking fights and being nasty and abusive to the rest of the family?
Okay.
Probably not. Maybe that's where your high fence is. And so you could have the conversation. Look, I see that you are really having a rough time and you're in a really crappy mood right now, and you can be in that mood. Fine. Here's where, so the feeling is okay. Whatever they're feeling is okay. What their behavior is needs to be addressed. So it's okay for you to feel lousy. It's okay for you to sulk around. It's okay for you to be in your room when you're feeling that way. It's not okay for you to come out and pick fights with your little brother. It's not okay for you to come out and start picking fights with everybody. If you're going to need to do that, then we're going to need to find another place for you to be until you're ready to come out and do that. But I don't know if that's helpful, but But
I think it is. I think I get it. You know, the behavior, the feeling is okay, and we need to, you know, we need to give them acknowledgement that they're feeling it.
yeah,
But how they express it, where we have to set the limits.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
And I know we're getting to the end, and there's a lot of questions. But I did want to ask you one more question, because I think these metaphors, at least for me, are helpful. And I also do want to say to everybody that's out there that if your child right now is experiencing anything that you feel is dangerous, you definitely should seek advice. And these are all, I just want to mention that these, you know, this is very much in generalities. So I just want to mention that to anyone who's really experiencing anything right now. And we will put Maria's information up so that you'll have access to that, to her email and to her Psychology Today website.
The profile. Yeah, my website is not up yet, so I'm sorry. I wish it was.
And I know you're fairly full, but anyway, I wanted to leave everyone before we kind of sum up some of what we've talked about today about adolescence in the tunnel.
Yeah.
And I think that will be really helpful and a great place to lead people to think about.
Okay.
About that.
Yes, and I also just want to say one quick thing about conversation with kids is with teens is not to probe for their feelings, not to start asking a lot of questions. Well, how are you feeling about this? That it's really more helpful for them if we can model the feelings, kind of like what you were saying, Dana, about this is really hard, I'm struggling with this. If we can model for them how to express feelings without requiring and asking them to share their feelings, that is generally creates a more open space for them to talk about how they're feeling.
Well, that's great. So don't ask them.
Don't ask them. Just talk from your own experience. So the tunnel metaphor I love because I hear from a lot of parents is like, I don't recognize my kid anymore. This kid used to be really engaged with the family and talkative and sweet and cuddly and interested in things. And now they're surly and angry and they're rude as hell and they just, you know, they won't do anything. And I'm worried that my kid is going to go out in the world and be a rude, nasty adult who doesn't care about anything that it seemed like they used to care about. And that's not true. So adolescence is a tunnel. The kid that goes in the tunnel is the same kid that's going to come out of the tunnel, only a lot more mature, a lot more integrated, a lot more processed. But the kid that is in the tunnel is not going to be recognizable as your child for the most part. So they're gonna look different. They're gonna act different. They're gonna use different words. They're trying on different personas. They're trying to figure out who they are separate from you. They're going to want to get piercings and tattoos, and they're not going to want to go to church if that was something that you wanted, that your family used to do. They're not going to want to cuddle with you, but then they will, and then they won't. And they're going to start plastering their face with makeup in ways that you think is atrocious. They're going to be wearing clothes. They're going to be rude and nasty. And you're feeling like, my God, I have a monster and I can't let this person out in the world at all. And they will come out the other side the same person. But you just got to tolerate that while they're in there, that's who they're going to be.
Yeah. And the last thing, and I know Jennifer, one of our guests, mentioned this about getting outside every day, and we didn't even get into that, but yes, I can, you know, I know from our own experience as a family, and I know, Maria, you know this as well, that it is so important for kids to get outside and exercise.
Yeah.
And we're really lucky here in San Francisco, and my colleagues in LA, it's pretty easy for us to get outside, not as easy in other parts of the country. But I'm sure that release, that exercise release, has got to be so beneficial for all teens, for all of us.
Yes. for all of us. And again, I think modeling is a good way
Yeah.
to go. I know that that's something that you do, Dana, and I do too. And so modeling, and when you're setting up with your kids and engaging them in the process of creating a schedule for themselves, creating a regular routine for themselves, ask them what they think about how important is exercise. Engage them in that. Is that something that getting outside is valuable to you? We think it is, and I'd like to incorporate that into a daily routine. Is that possible? And even if it isn't outside, even if they want to do, a yoga video or run up and down the stairs in their house or something, engage them in some way to see if they can come up with their own thought about that.
We've got some great exercise apps on Wide Open School. So you might want to take a look at that for your teens, some really good ones. So Maria, could we just wrap it up? And I think we have like 4 takeaways from this that I'd love for parents to remember. If they could remember 4 things, what would you say?
Well, I would say, first of all, recognize the developmental struggle that your kid is going through right now, which is very normal and exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They are doing what they're supposed to be doing. However, it's playing out in spades right now with all that's going on, with the needing to spend time with you and not with their peers, which is the opposite of what they want to be doing. So they're pushing back. They hate having to do this. And they don't hate you, even though they say they hate you, and they probably will. They don't. They are listening to you. And I think a lot of times parents really feel like my kid hates me. My kid is doing these things on purpose to make me angry. And they're not. They're pushing your buttons because that's what they need to do to separate. And parents don't realize that kids are really engaging in their normal developmental process. So I think that helps parents tolerate it a little bit more. So that's one. I think another takeaway, engage your kids in conversations. Give them an opportunity to talk about their feelings without fixing it. Crawl in the hole with them. Don't try to pull them out of the hole. Don't try to find solutions for them. Encourage them to engage in collaboration with you about finding their own solutions. The third one, keep limits while being flexible.
Yeah, limits.
Wide roads and high fences. Hold the limits, and don't let go of that rope. And then the last one is, boy, this is a tough time for all of us. Parents need support. 100%. Yeah. Connect with your friends, connect with a therapist if you have one, call the parental support line, go for a walk, get your own exercise. Rather than spending all your energy trying to get your kid to exercise, go for your own run. It's going to help you a lot more to engage with them if you can do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the happier that we are, when we're stressed, it comes out on our kids. So if we can take a break and just, get away for 30 minutes, go outside and then come back, it's all, you always feel so much better now when you have to deal with it.
There's a reason why when we're on the airplane, they say, put your own oxygen mask on first before you put your kids on. We have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of anybody else.
That's great. Well, Maria, thank you so much. And I want to let all the guests know that we are going to be sending out this video on YouTube. And we will also be sending out kind of a wrap up of what we talked about and answer the questions. I'm so happy that you were here, Maria. You've been so helpful to me. I really appreciate all of your advice and your guidance. And I just think you're awesome. So, hey, all of us parents out there, we are in this together. And let's just remember to sometimes we got to lean on each other to get through this, and that's okay. So Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you out there. And I want to let you know that we will have these weekly webinars. Sometimes we have them 2 times a week. And we hope that you'll come back to our next one, which will be next Wednesday. So Maria, thank you. And I will see you all later. Have a great day. Take some time to get outside.
Thank you, everyone.